In this video, I will be teaching you how to make your own knitting needles. What you'll need are scissors, wooden dowels, a knitting gauge, a ruler, beads, 220 grit sandpaper, and wax paper. So what you're going to have to do is go to the craft store and get a dowel. Now they come in all different sizes and they're pretty long stick, so you'll be able to make a couple or a full set of needles. So you're going to pick your needle, pick your dowel at the store. Then you're going to need to use your gauge counter or your knitting gauge thing. So if you don't have one, you can pick this up when you get the dowels. So you're going to take your dowel and go through the gauge and figure out which one it fits through snugly but still moves. So these are an 11. So I've noticed at my craft store, these are with the yellow color on the end. That usually means 11. Make sure you check first. And then there's these here, which one's smaller. I can't remember the color for this dowel, but this one's an 8. So once you determine what size your needle will end up being, then you're going to need to cut it down. So I took some store-bought knitting needles and I measured them. So this straight needle measures about 9 inches. Now you can, since you're making these yourself, you can adjust them however length that you like them. I prefer, I like the length of this. So 9 would be my straight one. So I would line up my dowel and cut 9 inches for a straight needle. Then for a double pointed needle, again, you can pick whatever size you like the best. This one measures about 7. So for a double pointed needle, you're going to do 7 inches. For a straight needle, it's going to be 9. If you'll be making straight needles, you can also pick up some wooden beads from the craft store to finish it off, or however you would like to finish the ends. So we'll come to those later. So first what you're going to need to do is cut your dowel. So this needle here is going to be a double pointed needle. So I've already lined it up to 7 inches, but this one here I'm going to make a straight needle. So you go to the end, so we're going to do 9 inches for a straight needle. So I already need to cut off some. So you're going to take a marker or a pen or something. You're going to line it up. And you're going to put a little mark where you want it cut. Now, it'd be better if you use like a handsaw or something more hardware friendly. But for just craft reasons, and actually I found this worked pretty good, you get a pair of scissors. You can even get a more sturdy pair of scissors. You're just going to find your mark here, put your scissors and press. And it's going to put a dent. There's a dent right here. Then you're just going to do that in a circle. So you rotate the dowel and squeeze. And you do that all the way around. So once you've made it all around, you see we made a dent there. Now you're just going to keep doing that, rotating and squeezing your scissors. Putting quite a lot of pressure. And you just keep doing that, twisting and squeezing. And you're denting in the wood, so you end up cutting it. You just keep going. And then you can tell, at one point it starts getting a little tough and you don't quite hear it pushing on it anymore. You take your fingers on either side and you keep putting pressure on it. And if it's too hard to snap, then go back with your scissors and press and rotate. And do it again until it snaps. And there. That's how you could trim your dowel without having to use anything really hardware or complex. So you just rotate and squeeze with the scissors. So now you've trimmed your dowel. So you have a double pointed needle and a straight needle. You'll also be needing a sharpener. Now this is just a pencil sharpener. So if your dowel is too big to fit in either one of the holes, then you're either going to have to find one that's big enough, or you're going to have to chisel away at it yourself with a sharp tool. But this one luckily fits enough in here. So you're just going to take the end. So this is going to be our double pointed needle. And what I do is when I put it in here, I hold it against the bottom of it. And you're just going to sharpen the dowel. So you'll see it's starting to sharpen the edge. And keep it even and hold it down at the bottom. See, it's getting there. Now we don't want it pointy like a pencil or anything, but we want to get a nice tapered ending to our needle. So I think that looks pretty good. You can even, you have your needle, a store-bought needle with you, and you can kind of see like how it tapers down. So when you roughly have what you want, then you're going to turn your needle over and you're going to do the same thing on the other side. And then you want to roughly make them match. So when you feel that they match good enough each point, then you're going to get your 220 grit sandpaper. Now if your dowel is a little rougher than just, because they're pretty smooth to start out with. If they're rougher, you want to get a rougher sandpaper. But this is like a finishing one. And you're going to go like this, and you're going to slide your needle back and forth just to kind of take off that first layer and make it nice and smooth. And like this part of the dowel, it has the price sticker, so it's kind of sticky. So you want to scrape all that off and just smooth out the whole needle. And then for the ends, you're going to soften the edges here, and if it ends up being a little rough, like where the transition from the dowel to the point is, you can take either a tougher grit sandpaper or just a nail file and just kind of soften the edge going towards the point. And then you can keep feeling it until it feels like it transitions nicely. You can even take this on the actual point and go like at a diagonal towards the point and file away. Try and keep each side of the double pointed needle relatively the same. And then you're going to take the sandpaper again, and you're going to just draw on it like you're using a pencil, and you're going to round out the tip because you don't want it pointy or rough. Make sure it's smooth because we don't want it snagging anything. But if it feels tough, you take a store-bought needle and you feel it, and it's pretty rounded and it doesn't hurt. So you want to keep having your You want to keep rolling this around on here until you get that. We're going for a rounded tip. So once you have like a rounded tip and it seems really smooth, do the same thing on the other side. So now you have both of them finished, so you have your double pointed. So you just want to go over the base of it. You want to make sure it's smooth. It has to be super smooth in order to be able to knit with it. So once you have it nice and smooth and your sharpened ends, if you feel that it's still not smooth enough to actually knit with it, you're going to take some wax paper that you get in the baking aisle, and you're just going to take your needle and you're going to buff it out like you did with the sandpaper. And some of the wax from the paper is going to transfer onto your needle, making them a lot smoother. Then you'll have this nice slick needle that you can use for knitting. And then you do the same thing for if it's a straight needle. So you're going to take the end and you're going to sharpen it. So when you got a good point, then you take your either rougher sandpaper or your nail file and just smooth out where it goes to a point. Smooth out the rough edges. You can even use this to round out the tip if you find that the rougher works better. Then you take your 220 sandpaper and you're going to smooth it out. Now remember, when you're making a straight needle, only sharpen the one end. Try not to forget. You can even place your ending piece on first before you get started so that you make sure you don't double sharpen it. So just make sure it's really smooth. You can even smooth the part that you ended up cutting unless it's the end of the dowel. You can take your nail file now if you had a tool to actually cut the dowel, you'd get a much smoother edge, but you can easily just rough it away with some sandpaper and stuff. Now for your ending of your straight needle. Make sure you take the wax paper and buff your needle. Okay, so now for the ending of your straight needle. You can get any type of bead, wooden to match, plastic, anything that would cover the end of your needle. You can even do polymer clay from the craft store. You just ball it up, stick it on the end, make your shape, take it off, bake it according to the instructions, and then you just place it back on. You can even use some glue too if it doesn't, it's not snug like that, to stay on. With the wooden beads, if you can't find any big enough, like I couldn't find any with the big enough hole to fit this size dowel, but I made sure that it fit the actual size of the bead. Like the bead is bigger. The bead is bigger than the end of the dowel. You would take a small hand tool and just drill it out. If you don't have a tool like I don't have, I know it's like a pedicure. If you have like a pedicure rotary thing where you can file down nails and stuff, that also worked. But the tip that I had wasn't small enough to go inside. You would take a nail file and cut it so it's a little skinnier. And it would take a long time, but you just file inside to make the hole wider. And just keep going back and forth until your dowel will fit. But I noticed for this one, which ended up being a size 8 needle, that the dowel fit in there pretty well. I just filed a little bit and pushed it really hard. So this is just on by cramming it in there. It's not glued or anything. You can't add glue if your dowel ends up being a little smaller than the bead. But then that's what the finished one would look like with the bead on the end. So now when you finish your needles, of course you want to make sure that you can actually knit with them. So take any yarn and start knitting. Then you also can do this with the test yarn just to make sure that you've sanded it enough and done the point right so that you can actually use them. And make sure that they slide pretty nice. You can go back with the wax paper or sandpaper to make sure they move good. And once you've done this a couple times, you'll realize how to make them as smooth as they need to be. You can even go with a much finer sandpaper to really buff them out. And there, you can see how nicely your homemade needles work at knitting. And now you can make any size that you ever need, or if you ever lose a needle, you can replace it by making your own. So I hope if anyone makes their own, please tweet me a picture and tell me how they worked out for you. I would love to know if this helped anybody out, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.